To be or not to be? That is the question.
Well, it's not my question. My question is, since money doesn't grow on trees, why do banks have branches?
Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles by opposing in them.
Say, just how many Kahlua and Cokes have you had?
To die, to sleep, no more. And by sleep, to say we end the heartache and the 1,000 natural shocks that flesh is hair too.
Speaking of hair, have you ever wondered why pubic hair knows when to stop growing?
To sleep, perchance to dream.
Man, will you just order the Baconator like you always do? You're holding up the line.
Welcome to Does This Still Work? The podcast looks at old weaves and asks, does this still work? I'm Joe Dixon.
And I'm George Romaka. And today we're discussing Outrageous Fortune from 1987 and some historical context. First, podcasty stuff. You can reach us at dtswpod@gmail.com, on Facebook, Letterboxd, and on our YouTube channel. And Joe is on Blue Sky at joedixon.bsky.social. Please tell your friends about us, even the ones that are KGB agents masquerading as acting teachers, and leave 5-star ratings everywhere. You can pick what we watch and get extra per-episode content by funding us on Patreon for as little as $1 a month at patreon.com/dtswpod.
We already lost a patron for some reason, so we've got plenty of openings for patrons.
Even if we hadn't lost a patron, we'd still have plenty of openings for patrons.
We would. Far too many.
Craig, what's wrong with you? All right. Now, Joe, take us back to 1987.
1987. So, this picture takes place in both New York City and Santa Fe, New Mexico. So our news sources will come from both those places. The basic premise of this movie is two women fighting over a guy who turns out to be involved in espionage. And what was the biggest 1987 story in the U.S. involving spying? That would be the trial and sentencing of Johathan Pollard. If you're unfamiliar with the name, Johathan Pollard was a naval intelligence analyst who was accused of spying for Israel. The thing is, it wasn't just Israel this scumbag was tossing out classified documents willy-nilly to. It has been established that he passed or tried to pass on information to China, an Australian naval officer, and my favorite, the apartheid government of South Africa. In some cases, the only reason countries didn't take him up on his services is because they thought it was a trap by the CIA. In fact, the Israelis, whom he approached, they didn't come to him, at first thought he was running some sort of sting operation. But eventually, Israel did start paying Pollard for his illegally obtained information. This is my own feeling, but since he was Jewish, I think the cover story they came up with, if he got captured, was that he was only helping an American ally and that he was a strong Zionist. Because, until I read up on this case, that's the only spin I can remember from this. You see, he wasn't really a bad guy. He just wanted to protect Israel, which, by the way, even if that was true, which it wasn't, unless people think keeping South Africa's white minority rule A-OK was somehow helping Israel, it would still be unacceptable. If you want to know more about Israel and its morally compromised relationship with South Africa, I recommend the book The Unspoken Alliance, Israel's Secret Relationship with Apartheid South Africa by Sasha Blaklo-Saransky. Sorry if I butchered the name, man. This is an especially important book if you're a listener who wonders why it's South Africa of all nations that is taking the Jewish state to International Court of Justice for the crime of genocide in Gaza.
Wait. You mean an apartheid state was trying to prop up another apartheid state? Color me shocked.
Well, it's very interesting because Israel obviously did not think of itself at the time, I guess even then, or now, thought of itself as an apartheid state.
Yeah, racists don't see themselves as racist either.
But after the whole thing with the Gazans and various Muslims going, or rather Arabs, I guess you should say, Muslims, Arabs, whatever, saying, hey, we live here. That's when things really went to shit. But that's a whole other story for a whole other podcast, not here. Let's get back to Pollard. This man got so many breaks and continually came close to being found out before he eventually was that it made my head spin just reading it. There's a link to his Wikipedia page in the show notes if you want to read it for yourself. But it is wild stuff. Anyway, let's see what the press in 1987 was saying about the talented Mr. Pollard. This comes to us from the Albuquerque Tribune. Headline, George.
Relations fair despite spy affair. That rhymes.
It does rhyme. I will quote, Strains in the Israeli-American relationship appear to have been eased, but not eliminated, by the announcement that the Israeli Air Force colonel accused of recruiting an American naval intelligence analyst as a spy was resigning as commander of a major Israeli air base. Nevertheless, administration officials stressed the need for improved Israeli cooperation in the American investigation into the case. Concerns reportedly exist in the Justice Department that Israel may have been using other Americans besides the naval analyst Johathan J. Pollard, who was sentenced on March 4th to life in prison. The Justice Department is also moving to revoke the immunity from prosecution granted to 3 other Israelis who were said to have been involved. Raphael Eitan, who has been named head of Israel's state-owned chemical industry, Yusuf Yager, a former science attaché, and Erk Urbe, an Israeli embassy secretary. None of the 3 are in the United States. No kidding. End quote. I did the end, no kidding. All of those people, including the man who recruited Pollard, fled to Israel, which is where Pollard now lives after being released from prison. He did 30 years hard time. If you're wondering what he's up to these days, he recently posted on Twitter that Israel should have arrested the families of Israeli hostages taken by Hamas during the Israel-Hamas war to prevent them from interfering in Israel's war plans. So, he's still a classy guy.
What an asshole.
I know, isn't that like unbelievable? And can you imagine, people are already pissed at Netanyahu. The bulls, he would have to be insane to have done something like that. Mm-hmm. He's already a complete asshole. Man, people would have ran over his compound or whatever the White House equivalent is in Israel. What a dumb idea. Anyway, one more news story, still about Pollard. This one brought to us from New York Newsday. Headline, George.
Fed want tough deal for Israel spy.
I will now quote, convicted spy Johathan Pollard, who used the money Israel paid him for classified documents to live in a style that included travel in a private compartment on the Orient Express. You see, it's not just a book, folks.
Mm-hmm.
Shows no remorse for his actions and should receive a stiff sentence, the Justice Department said yesterday in court papers. The court papers contend that at the time of his arrest, Pollard had collected more than $50,000 in cash from his Israeli handlers, and that he told them twice that he wanted more money. The Justice Department said that when Pollard's wife, Anne, admired a $7,000 diamond and sapphire ring in a Paris jewelry store in 1984, the Israeli Army colonel accompanied them, bought it for her the next day. The government papers note that Pollard and his wife, who pleaded guilty to lesser charges, had a combined income of $29,000.
I am incensed that they said pleaded instead of pled.
Yeah. Despite that, they paid cash for the almost $20,000 in American Express bills they charged in 1 year. During a 3-week summer vacation in 1985, they stayed at the best hotels in European capitals, paying a total of $4,500 in cash for hotels alone. And travel from Venice to Zurich, they obtained a private compartment on the Orient Express costing more than $700, the papers say. End quote. George, before we start talking about the movie, I want to ask this question. I understand people commit crimes for money so they can spend the money. However, the fastest way to get caught is to spend crazy amounts of dough that your salary couldn't possibly be covering, isn't it?
No, I think the fastest way to get caught is to fuck up the robbery.
No, is it even in the Denzel Washington movie? Now, granted, these are also in the past. When his character got caught, it was based on a true story. You remember, and the reason they got caught is because he went to the boxing match or whatever it was in a fur coat.
Oh, yeah. If you look like you shouldn't be making that much, they're going to ask questions.
Yeah, and the first thing should pop into people's minds.
And especially nowadays with everything being digital.
Yeah.
Like, number one, if you're buying everything in cash, you're a fucking weirdo, and people are going to notice. And number two, if you're spending exorbitant amounts of money digitally, the system's going to notice.
Yeah. Hard to get away with it. What you need to do, ladies and gentlemen, I'll tell you how to get away with criming. What you need to do is take all that money that you have and just put it away, do your regular job, and then just gradually spend that money. And then once you retire, you can spend it as you like. No one's going to pay as much attention because you'll be using cash and stuff. That's my idea. By the way, when you were never a naval officer, George, did they ever try and recruit you?
Who?
The Navy.
I was never a naval officer, but did the Navy ever try to recruit me?
You were in the Navy. I'm saying, did they ever try and push you upstairs, or is that downstairs? So that's an upstairs job, right?
I don't know what you're talking about, Joe.
When you were in the Navy, did anybody go, hey, this George guy, he seems cool. Let's make him a naval officer?
No.
Did you make it a sergeant or something? Or what
I was petty officer first class.
Petty officer first class, yeah.
Yeah, I moved up through the enlisted ranks.
But there was no...
No, nobody was trying to push me into being an officer. That happened at Con Ed, and they eventually won.
Ah. Oh, that's where you got pushed upstairs. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, George, tell us about Outrageous Fortune! Even though that They don't sing it that way. For some reason, every time I hear it, I keep thinking of Ruthless People every time I say Outrageous Fortune, and they have the song Ruthless People, which we're going to
I think you did that when we announced this episode, too.
Yeah, and that's why I do it.
Yep. All right, this was directed by Arthur Hiller,
whom I've seen a bunch of films he's directed. I've seen See No Evil, Hear No Evil, The In-Laws, the 1979 version, Silver Streak, The Hospital, Plaza Suite, Love Story, the biggest film of its era, we got to watch that sometime, and Poppy, which is my short circuit, by which I mean this was a white actor pretending to be a Puerto Rican, but I didn't notice.
Gotcha.
Because I was a child. Although technically Puerto Ricans could pass for white. Some could, but this man did not look Puerto Rican in any way.
Oh, and this was written by Leslie Dixon. No known relation to Joe.
No known relation. Could be. I mean, I'm sure my dad fucked around, so who knows?
Yeah.
What has she done?
And I've seen their work in Mrs. Doubtfire and Pay It Forward.
Are those two very different films or very same films? I'm not even sure. Do any of the films...
Very different film.
All three?
There's only two there, Joe.
No, but I mean, I'm including Outrageous Fortune.
Oh, yes.
No, good for her. Glad that's a lot of talent to write very different films.
Mm-hmm. Blurbs. IMDb says 2 women unknowingly share the same man, but when he disappears, both go out looking for him and enter his surprisingly dangerous life. Okay.
Yeah, sure, why not?
And Amazon says 2 women meet and it's hate at first sight.
Well, that's not...
Pithy, but not accurate.
Yeah, there's more to it than that. Sadly. Do you think the Bechdel test saw this movie and died? It gave the Bechdel test a heart attack?
Yes.
Even though I don't think the Bechdel test existed at the time in 1987, but...
No, it didn't, but that's it. It's fine. We can apply the test to things in the past. It's funnier that way. And yes, the Bechdel test threw up when it saw this movie. The opening credits roll over Patti LaBelle's Something Special and feature imagery of fashion and makeup which seem more apropos to Boomerang than the plot of this film.
Yeah, it's got nothing to do with it. I didn't understand that opening credits had nothing to do with the picture.
Mm-hmm. We meet one of our protagonists, Lauren, in a theatrical fencing class and learn that she has ambitions to play Hamlet. She is somewhat overzealous in her technique and her fencing partner doesn't appreciate it. Lauren is played by Shelley Long,
whom we both know as Diane from Cheers. And I've seen in A Small Circle of Friends, the Brady Bunch movie, and a Very Brady sequel.
We also see her in ballet class, and she has a rather impressive ability to ballet jump a good distance to the chagrin of her classmates.
Dude, you really need to jump that far in ballet?
I don't know, Joe. I've never done ballet, and this is a movie.
I've seen ballet. I was on a date with someone recently to see ballet. They didn't jump that far. It wasn't necessary.
Depends on the ballet.
Yeah, but it's not a competition. The guy who's catching you should be near you. Someone's going to catch you.
I don't normally introduce characters who are only in one scene. I break that a few times in this film, and here's one of them. He's George, another ballet student, and he asks Lauren to dinner. This is the end clip of the show, so I won't say any more, but he's played by Christopher McDonald,
whom we've seen for the show in Thelma and Louise, Happy Gilmore, and Flubber, and who I've personally seen in The Quiz Show and Grumpy Old Men. And George and I both heard him in The Iron Giant, a very good cartoon we should probably review sometime.
Mm-hmm. And I have seen him in The Perfect Storm.
I know you save the clip for the end, so we're going to have to get into what he says, but how weird was that he's there? This is the sort of cameo they have for a big star.
This was his, 4th movie.
Yeah. It screams, hey, this is a big star type cameo, when in fact he wasn't
yet. Yeah.
Isn't it weird? It's bizarre.
After class, she spots a flyer for acting classes taught by legendary actor Stanislav Korzeniowski. She's going to need $5,000 and knows just where to go to get it. She goes to her parents' apartment building. Through the intercom, she argues with her mother, who won't give her another dime as Lauren already owes $32,000. She's Daddy's little girl, though, and he drops a check for $5,000 out the window for her.
I get why that scene exists. It's supposed to be meant to be funny and all this sort of stuff. But if her parents are really all that upset about spending so much money on her, why did she have her separate apartment? Why wouldn't she just live with them? So at least that way they can save some money.
Good question, Joe.
If I had a kid, I'm like, oh, God, honey, you're not really making it as an actress, but you are working. I mean, she does have a day job. So, all right, fine. Why don't you just stay with us until it takes up? I mean, they could, even though we only see the outside of the house, pretty clear there's a well-off family.
And she's going to land that role in Cheers. I mean, she's going to be set.
She's going to be set eventually, yeah. She's going to play Mrs. Brady in the Brady Bunch.
Yep. Now funded, Lauren heads to the acting school. In the waiting room, she is nervously going through vocal warm-ups and meets another student, Weldon, who seems just as nervous as she does.
He's played by Anthony Held, and we both saw him in The Sound of the Lambs, and I've seen in The Pelican Brief, Kiss of Death, and X-Men Last Stand. Quick thing on the Pelican Brief. That is the film that has both Denzel Washington and Julia Roberts in it that nobody remembers. Two very big stars. No one recalls this picture whatsoever. And I'll tell you probably why. There is no romantic scene in that film between these two gorgeous people. I mean, they don't even so much as hold hands in that movie. And can you guess why?
Because miscegenation?
Close.
Yeah.
But on whose part?
The studio.
No.
Really?
Curiously enough, Denzel Washington does not date white women in movies. Like in all his pictures, always black women.
No, he's not. It's fine.
So who knows? We'll never know what Julia Roberts thought of it.
Our second protagonist, Sandy, comes in loudly asking to use the phone. She calls the phone company and flirts with the billing guy to keep him from turning her phone service off. Lauren is already nervous, and Sandy screaming into the phone doesn't help. Sandy decides to also audition for the school, having some apparent porn acting experience according to Weldon. The two square off and argue before Lauren is called back for her audition.
And I've seen in Get Shorty and Ruthless People.
And I've seen in Hocus Pocus and The First Wives Club. And that's one that's got to go on a list.
Okay, cool. I just want to say one thing. Let's tell you how my mind works. I've never actually seen this movie all the way through, but I saw maybe one or two clips before in my life. And I would swear, if you would ask me, I would have thought there was a scene where Bette Midler goes into audition and it comes out the door wiping her mouth. I could have sworn that was in this movie. And it's not.
The movie was also kind of leading you up to thinking that might be the case. We briefly see Stanislav Korzeniowski in his office, selecting the headshots of students he's accepting into class. He seems particularly interested in Sandy, but that won't really matter.
No.
Stanislav Korzeniowski is played by Robert Prosky,
who I've seen in Christine, that is the Stephen King ghost car movie. I also seen him in Broadcast News and Dead Man Walking.
In their first class, Korzeniowski instructs them to be diligent in their note-taking because he will be reading their notes and is an egoist who wants his words recorded for history. It's really for another reason, but we'll find that out later. Sandy comes in late and hands Korzeniowski some student aid forms.
Which, he doesn't seem like the type who will have student aid, because this is just a private instructor.
I think that was the joke.
Ah, okay. Oh, then it went over my head.
Mm-hmm. Lauren works in a costuming shop and complains to her coworker about Sandy's unrefined ways. In walks a customer, Michael, purporting to be an elementary school teacher, looking for a pumpkin costume for one of his students. Lauren is immediately taken with him and offers to make the costume herself. Michael is played by Peter Coyote, and both of us have seen him in E.T. the Extraterrestrial, and I've seen him in Erin Brockovich.
Maybe this makes sense to you, but to me it didn't. Was he planning to pick her up? Was it always the plan from the very beginning? Or was it just, he just walked in there?
It must have been. He must have been targeting her because she was in Korzeniowski's class.
And then he's also targeting Bette Midler. There were other women in the class. Why those two?
Good question, Joe. Because they're the protagonists of the movie.
Of the film, yeah. They don't have a movie if it's not those two. It's like, okay, when the film was done, I was trying to think, why did he have to pick up those two to do his spying thing? I didn't quite understand, and it never came together for me. And apparently you have no answer either, so okay.
Nope. They go back to her place and don't work on the costume for long before they're in bed. He's everything she could ever want. Kind, handsome, and single. His only flaw is his obsessive use of Colton's tobacco. In the morning, they talk while she works on the costume before she's in his lap, speaking in a Russian accent while they engage in some chicken-based food play. No kink-shaming here.
You've done that, right?
Not with chicken.
What food?
Kale.
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 Rice Krispies.
Yeah. No, I'd use Fruity Pebbles.
Fruity Pebbles.
The second day of class, Sandy notices that Lauren seems less stuffy and assumes correctly that she got laid. When it comes time to recite some Hamlet, Sandy is woefully unprepared.
Would you think when I finally get laid, you think you'll be able to tell it happened for me?
Yes. You will be a much happier man.
No, knowing me, I'll probably come and complain about my performance or something.
I believe that. I 100% believe that you would complain about your performance. Even if she doesn't, you will. You know how I know? Because you're a lot like me, and I would do that. After class, Sandy goes home, and Michael is waiting for her. We get a brief montage of both Sandy and Lauren sleeping with him, so we can hear how he gets right before he orgasms.
God. Oh, God. Oh, God. Oh, God. Oh, God. Oh, God. Oh, God.
This will be a plot point later.
It certainly will.
This movie was really good at check-offing things.
It did. It did set things up, except part where why he's sleeping with these two girls.
Yeah, that part, who the fuck cares? All the little other things, fucking they all come back.
They all come back, yes, including even the jump.
Mm-hmm.
What sounds do you make when you're fucking George? Do you say, oh God, oh God?
No, I don't say, oh God. I sort of do guttural grunts.
Yeah, I'm more of a grunter.
Like
I don't
caveman type sounds. Day 3 of class is all about death. Korzeniowski starts choking Weldon until Lauren stops him. She's told to die when he shoots her with his finger guns. She Shatners it, and Korzeniowski is unimpressed.
Check off. Another one checked off there. That is going to come back as well.
Mm-hmm. After class, she gets into a cab with Michael. He says she needs flowers and tells the cabbie to stop in front of a flower shop. After a moment, the shop explodes to Lauren's horror, and this is where the film jumps the shark.
Well, it becomes a completely different movie.
Yeah. Sandy hears the news about Michael's demise in a bar from the TV. Both Lauren and Sandy show up at the morgue wanting to see Michael's body. They get into a fight over him and eventually pull the sheet off of the charred remains. They both deduce, by a lack of an appendectomy scar and a small penis size, that the body is not, in fact, Michael's.
Well, it's not that it's small. It's like a pencil, apparently.
Thin. It's thin.
Thin.
They take their hypothesis to the police, who laugh and throw them out of the station.
On the one hand, you can't blame the cops. On the other hand, what investigation did these guys do? A building explodes.
Well, they found ID in the wallet on the body, so they called it good.
Yeah, I guess.
In the street, they get into an argument and an incompetent fistfight. They're observed by Atkins and Pinansky, two CIA guys in a surveillance van who are hunting Michael.
Although it's not clear who they are initially.
Yeah, but I'm telling a summary, so I might as well just do that so I can refer to them that way later.
Well, I'm just saying, it makes it kind of stupid since obviously if they just came out and say, hey, we're from the CIA, we want to ask you about your lover, they would just talk to them. There's no need to chase them around, which they do for half this movie.
But it's funnier that way.
Was it funnier?
I mean, yes, it's funnier than things being reasonable and sane. Atkins is played by John Schuck, who we've seen for the show in MASH, and both of us have seen in Dick Tracy.
And I've seen in McCabe and Mrs. Miller.
And I've seen in Star Trek 4 and 6. Pinansky is played by Gary Morgan,
who I've seen in the movie everyone seems to have forgotten won an Oscar for Best Picture in 2011, The Artist. I also see him in Gremlins 2, The New Batch, and Logan's Run.
And I've seen him in The Final Countdown. The women decide to go to their apartments together, each thinking Michael will be at their own. They head to Lauren's place first.
Let's say you think someone you love just got blown up, and you think, oh no, maybe they're alive. And you go, you know where they're at? My house.
My place.
As opposed to like, why would this, great, now cell phones aren't around, okay. Shouldn't that person be making phone calls? I would be really pissed if I get to a house, like someone's dead and they're still alive there. I'm like, what the fuck? Why have you not contacted me? Where have you been? I would be fighting with someone else. Oh, no, he's with my place. No, he's at my place. Oh, he loves me. I love him. Like, this fucker better be dead because otherwise, what the hell is he doing?
Michael is not at Lauren's place, but two Russian KGB agents are ransacking it. The ladies are spotted and have to run for their lives. In the hallway, the two Russians are killed by the CIA agents as the girls escape through a room full of birds, which reminded me of episode 200, The Third Man.
The Third Man. Yeah, I was thinking of that too. Although, at least here, it makes a bit more sense because it's obviously meant to be funny.
Yeah.
And The Third Man, I don't know what that scene was for. Love that movie. It's a good movie. Do not at me. I got some complaints from people I know in real life, like, oh, you love that movie. This is a good movie. What do you knock? I'm like, I didn't knock the movie. I wasn't trying to look for things to knock about it. I'm just saying that scene didn't make it. He said, it happens. You can still be a good movie and have a scene that doesn't work, okay? Jesus.
Yeah. They lose the CIA guys by hiding in working, operating dryers in a laundry room with clothes in them, begging the question of how they had them both turned on if they were inside them.
Also, can't you get stuck in there? How do you get out?
You usually just have to push the door. There's no like...
And you just really... Okay, yeah. I thought those things were like refrigerated.
For the reason of that.
Okay.
Sandy's place only looks ransacked. It's just messy. They argue some more over who gets Michael when they find him before deciding to look in the nearby tobacco store.
Because there's only like 2 or 3 tobacco stores in all of New York.
Yep. Sandy promises a double blowjob to the tobacco store clerk for info about Michael. The clerk excitedly agrees, only to be stiffed on his stiffy.
How does this guy work in New York? You get the money up front.
Yeah, you get the payment first.
Yes.
They find out that Michael was there only an hour ago and used the payphone outside. So Sandy uses that phone and calls her guy at the phone company and finds out that Michael called a particular cab company, so that's their next location. And in between everything, they argue with each other.
Yes, they keep arguing. Now, listen, Bette Midler seems like she'd be a lot of fun, both in this picture and in real life. But not so much fun she would get away with all this shit. I mean, come on. Guys are just falling for her bullshit left and right. Only one character actually calls them both on their bullshit. But no one's calling her like, come on. She's just doing this all the way through the picture. I'm like, come on.
They find the right cabbie and lie bribe him to take them to where he dropped Michael off. That cab driver is played by Jitu Kumbuka, and I've seen him in Brewster's Millions.
Okay. We really need to discuss this character. When they first went to the cab company, I thought for sure the cab driver was going to be George Carlin, because he's played cab drivers before, especially in this era of his career. Okay, so it's this black man who they're terrified of for some reason.
Well, Lauren
Okay.
more than Sandy.
Lauren makes a lot of weirdly racist comments, and I'm not sure what I was supposed to take from that.
We're going to get to one of them in a second.
Okay, so I didn't really care for that. Also, the way the thing is shot, I got the impression we're supposed to be afraid of this man. I didn't see it. Other than him being a black man and tall, I didn't know what was supposed to be menacing about his presence. He just seemed like annoyed that these two women had wasted his time when he could be working.
Yep. The place is a tenement in what white people call the wrong part of town, or the other side of the tracks.
Where are we? We've been going for miles and I haven't seen a single white person on the street.
There's one. Oops, they got him.
It's not funny.
Yes, it is. Oh, that's hilarious.
No, not to me.
No, if you're doing that to fuck with the racist,
Oh, you see
yes,
what
it is.
Bette Midler's saying. Okay.
Yeah. What Bette Midler's saying is funny. There's one. Oh, they got him.
What the absolute fuck was that about? And how white is it? All right, granted, I know Woody Allen also lives in Manhattan. Apparently, he also doesn't know black people exist here. But I mean, honestly, what the fuck? She's in acting class, and we see there are black people in her acting class, so she's aware we exist. I don't know what the fuck that was.
Sandy lie bribes him another $300 to wait for them. Inside the tenement, a child attempts to mug them with a toy gun. They turn the tables and get the kid to lead them to where he saw Michael go. They find a couple of drug dealers, and Lauren goes into acting mode pretending to be a plainclothes New York City cop. They disarm the dealers and learn that they made a fake passport for Michael and get the name that he's using. The dealers offer a lunchbox full of cash if they'll let them go, and the girls take the deal. So they're able...
Because it's that easy.
Yep, and so they're able to pay the cabbie after all. That's nice.
Yeah, that's very sweet.
They have the cabbie take them to the airport. The ticketing agent won't give out passenger lists, so Lauren and Sandy pull a foreign kid with a dad who just got out of jail bit to gain sympathy. This doesn't work, but the agent is impressed with how badly they did it, so they find out that Michael went to Albuquerque, the city what Bugs Bunny always needed to take a left turn at, and get a flight to beat him there as his connection is delayed.
And the ticket agent is played by Florence Stanley, whom I know from Bulworth, The Prisoner of Second Avenue, and I saw her for the first time ever in the TV show Fish, a spinoff of Barney Miller. Two shows George has never heard of.
Nope. The CIA guys catch up with them, and they get chased through the airport. Sandy uses the rest of the money in the lunchbox to cause a crowd to block their gate, and they make it safely onto the plane.
Man, what were airports like back in the day?
Not only that, but okay, I gotta give props to the writing, because they have a lunchbox full of they have enough money to do anything they need to do ever. But they couldn't have that for the rest of the movie.
No.
Otherwise, you can't have all the trouble they're going to get into.
Right.
So they have to get rid of all of that money right now. So they do that by using it to create a freaking Joker-esque, blockade of people.
Which, in all fairness, would work every time. If you want to cause a distraction, you got a bunch of money you can afford to get rid of, just throw that out. People really will start grabbing for it. You will get away. That actually is true. Every time you see it in a movie, it seems ridiculous, but it's not. That's really what happened.
Yep. They make it to Albuquerque, and so does the CIA, who chase them through the baggage conveyor system. They eventually escape on a stolen police motorcycle and chase after a cab they saw Michael get into. They follow Michael down to some docks. They have a friendly moment before they go in to see him. They confront him, and he pulls a gun on them. Not many words can be exchanged before he's wounded by CIA gunfire. The ladies extract him and take him down the beach. At night, he finally comes to and uses a radio to call his crew off of a rendezvous, and instead to meet him in Tres Cruces, as the CIA has a helicopter searching the area. If you haven't guessed by now, Michael is not a mild-mannered schoolteacher and now sees Lauren and Sandy as loose ends to tie up. And by tie up, I mean slice to death with a switchblade.
Although, why?
Good question, Joe.
They're not really loose ends. You can just leave them there. They don't know anything about him.
Lauren and Sandy run looking for the safety of a CIA searchlight, which Michael tries to stay out of. Eventually, he gives up and the chopper lands. Who pops out but Weldon, who happens to be CIA. But while he's chasing them, he's like saying, I'm gonna get you, I'm gonna get you, You know you're using oxygen up to say those words. You don't have to say those words while you're chasing these women around to kill them.
No, you don't.
You're just slowing yourself down.
And again, you don't really need to kill them. They don't know anything. What is the point?
Yeah. At a field office, we get caught up on the plot. Michael was a great CIA agent who went rogue and stole an extremely powerful defoliant that can obliterate the U.S. food supply with only a few drops.
If such a thing device worked, wouldn't it destroy all crops? It wouldn't just stop in America?
Well, I mean, it's going to get dispersed by the wind, but those few drops might be able to cover that much area, but it would still get diluted by that wind, and it wouldn't be able to get much further. If they opened that whole vial and it got up into the friggin' jet stream, yeah, everybody's toast.
Yeah, okay.
But this is also what we call a MacGuffin.
You want to explain what that is to those uninitiated?
It's an object desired by all of the parties in the film.
It's my favorite example of MacGuffin is
the briefcase in Pulp Fiction.
That's a good one, yeah. But I was actually thinking of maybe it's not a MacGuffin, but I remember Hitchcock talking about how you like to create suspense, and I have two characters talking, and there's a bomb under the desk, but they don't know it. So that creates suspense with the people because the audience knows, but the characters don't. But I guess that's not a MacGuffin.
That's not really a MacGuffin. That's just a suspenseful plot device.
He called it something, I forget. That old Hitch, he knew all the terms.
Yep. He was going to sell the thing to the Russians, but then screwed them over too, trying to disappear. Krasnowski is actually a KGB agent Michael was working with, using the girls' notebooks from the acting class to pass messages. Check off check.
Yep.
Atkins thinks the girls were working for Michael and doesn't believe them when they say he's headed to Tres Cruces. So Atkins and Weldon take a CIA transport van moving Lauren and Sandy somewhere. The van is actually being driven by Korzeniowski in a rubber mask and another Russian agent. He knocks the CIA guys out with a spray before unmasking himself.
How did he also not knock out the girls as well? Because they literally use a spray.
No, because he wanted to know where Michael went.
No. I understand why he didn't want to knock them out. What I couldn't understand was when he shot that spray, the girls are right there. They would have breathed that in too.
Yeah, no, it's a very directional spray.
I guess. It went right up their strict nostrils.
It only works on men. Or it only works on CIA agents.
I guess.
Lauren tries to run. Korzeniowski fires a gun at her, and she does a better job of dying than he expected, which allows her to disarm him when he comes to check on her. Check off check.
Yep.
The girls leave the Russians and the CIA guys tied to some trees and head off again to find Michael.
Why?
Well, this time they're looking for him to get the defoliant back because it's the only way to clear their names.
Oh, that's true. That's fair.
Also, to rip his face off. They bond some more on the road before hitchhiking their way to Tres Cruces. In Tres Cruces, they meet Frank, a local white guy in red face who claims to be a friend of the Chickasaw Nation. Frank is played by George Carlin in red face.
Is his face really red? He didn't particularly look like he had much makeup.
No,
really.
And the movie calls him out on it.
Yeah.
Which, I guess it's a wash. A white wash.
I mean, he's definitely a white man. The film points out that he's definitely not a Native American. But yeah, it was weird. Anyway, good old George we've seen in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure and in Dogma. Both George and I have seen him in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. I've seen him in Car Wash. And where did you see him, George?
Jersey Girl and Cars.
So he was both in Car Wash and Cars.
And you mentioned that the last time we had to mention him, too.
I'll mention it every single time it comes up. By the way, did you see his AI performance?
Nope.
For those uninitiated, some geniuses put out an AI George Carlin special called I'm Glad I'm Dead. Don't listen to it. It's terrible. As you would imagine. It's an AI version of someone's stand-up act.
They're dismissive at first, but they need a guide. And Frank turns out to be an excellent tracker, finding one of Michael's Colton's cigarettes. It's a second checkoff for that, because the Russians also found it. Found, the tobacco, and he was here.
That's correct, yes.
They follow Michael to a whorehouse and swap clothes with Frank against his will to pretend to be little boys. The madam lets them in, and they find out which room Michael is in by listening for his "oh gods." Check. Once he's passed out, they take the defoliant, but can't escape before he wakes up. They get picked up by a truck full of migrant workers while Michael limps after them with his knife out. That is not a metaphor. It's an actual knife.
Why does this man like knives so much? Wouldn't a gun be more effective?
Yes, Joe, it would. They find Frank passed out in the truck. He wakes, and he's not happy to be sobering up. Still, he takes them to his home, where they try to use the phone, but it's off because he doesn't know how to flirt with the operator.
Evidently not, yeah.
Check. Michael shows up and grabs Lauren while Sandy escapes on a burro. That's a donkey.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the rest of the movie is comedic action with a little bit of people helping people. Michael arranges with the CIA to exchange $20 million for the defoliant via helicopter exchange. Sandy comes back and convinces Frank that he'll be showered with money if he helps her rescue her new friend Lauren.
And that'll also be revisited.
Yep. Michael forces Lauren to do the exchange on a cliff via helicopter drop at gunpoint. He double-crosses the CIA, keeping the vial, and shoots the helicopter down. The copter drops the suitcase with the money and lands more or less safely, but out of range to be of any help. Sandy, Frank, and a posse of locals show up and stall Frank while Lauren takes the vial and the money and runs. She and Sandy reunite and climb a cliff, Michael close behind. Sandy throws the briefcase so she can use her hand to help Lauren, and Frank and the locals are indeed showered with money.
Check.
Yep. Michael catches up to them and shoves Sandy off of a cliff non-fatally. Lauren escapes by making a magnificent ballet leap across a chasm. Check. Michael fails to match her grace and falls to his death.
And everyone cheers this.
Yep.
Even the people who have no idea what's going on, has no idea who this man is, who these women are. They're like, hey, this random person is dead. I just saw a man fall to his death. Yay. That probably was the only time I laughed at the film. But ironically, I don't think the film meant that to be funny in that way. I was like, what the fuck are you all applauding?
Finally, we see Sandy and Lauren in a production of Hamlet with the CIA guys and even Korzanowski in the audience. The end.
The end. All right, my friend. Does Outrageous Fortune actually work?
Nah.
Still work?
Nah.
Did it ever work?
Like it's really campy. I will give it props for playing with racism, for playing with like anti-racism a little bit by making a joke out of the racist. But that's not enough to make it work.
Well, I want to explore a little bit about the racist thing, because I've noticed that bit in films before, and in TV. Curious enough, after I'd seen this movie, I just happened to see a clip, because sometimes I look at old clips of old shows I used to watch. I was looking at a clip of Frasier. Shelley Long was on Cheers with the Frasier character spun off from whatever. Okay. Frasier introduces his coworkers. One of his coworkers is black, and his brother goes, "Hey, brother," sort of thing. And that's obviously meant to be a joke. Because, isn't that stupid? He's so racist. And I've seen that done so many times. At some point, I'm wondering, who is that for? Am I supposed to think that's funny, or is the white people watching supposed to think that's funny?
The white people, Joe. The white people are supposed to think it's funny.
I've seen that trope so many goddamn times. I'm like, how am I as a black person supposed to take that little witticisms or whatever the fuck is?
That shit is there to make me feel better about being white. To make me feel like I'm less of a racist because I think it's funny to make fun of the racist.
Yeah, I didn't care for it.
Yeah, it's not enough. It's not enough to make it work because I know what it's doing.
I don't think it works. I think it's dated. I mean, it's like we've seen way worse. Let's be clear on that. It's not that bad.
Yeah.
It's as far as films from 1987 goes, the women exist only for this man. They seem to have no other lives. We know nothing about Bette Midler's character.
Well, she was in a porno, Joe.
She was in or some sort of sex-related films, yes. We know that about her, and that apparently she can trick men into things, get them to do things. Not women, but other men, apparently. I guess lesbians.
She has a very friendly vagina.
Yes. Apparently lesbians don't exist in this reality, or maybe her feminine willies don't work on them.
Willies? Wild.
What was it called? Feminine wiles? Is that the word?
Yeah.
Wiles, willies, whatever. It's the same thing.
That's cute, Joe.
And what we do know about Shelley Long's character is just we know about her parents and she's a spoiled girl. Okay. So at least we get a little bit of background on her. Weirdly enough, even though Bette Midler is the bigger movie star, she's been in more films than Shelley Long was at this time. Shelley Long, it's really more her movie.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. I don't think she carries it very well. It's probably why she's not a movie star right now. I mean, she's not terrible by any means. It's like, the
acting wasn't the problem in this movie.
Her acting was not a problem. She can act. I just didn't find the story that interesting. I didn't find her character that compelling. In point of fact, if I had to follow anybody in this film, I'd rather followed the Bette Midler character more closely because she at least is. Bette Midler knows what she's in, and I'm not sure Shelley Long did.
Right.
Bette Midler goes like, this is just bullshit. Let me just play my way through this thing. I'm not going to take any of this seriously. Well, I think Shelley Long is really trying to find a character in there, and there is not one for her to find. So, anyway, yeah, I don't think it works. It's a 1987 movie that belongs in 1987.
Alrighty.
All right, Georgie, what's up next?
Next week, we'll be talking about Hot Tub Time Machine from 2010.
I haven't seen this in years.
And I put this on the list because I think Joe didn't like it.
I do not remember it.
Okay, good.
I definitely saw it, but I don't remember it, so we'll see if I still don't like it, or maybe I'll love it. Who knows? I've been very surprised. There's plenty of films I'd like, oh my God, I don't want to see this is garbage. Then I saw it and go like, hey, this is actually pretty good.
And it's another less than 2 hour movie, so that's good.
That's good. Yes, always good to have less than 2 hour movies. So I guess that's it for this episode. I'm Joe Dixon. Thanks for listening.
And I'm George Ramacka. Thanks for listening indeed, because if a podcast drops and there's no one around to hear it, it's just another collection of ones and zeros that doesn't matter.
George, I thought you were gay.
Oh, I am. It's just I play so many heterosexual roles, I feel I really need to do some serious research.
You've been listening to Does This Still Work? Produced by Joe Dixon and George Ramacka. The hosts can be reached via social media, email, or the contact page at dtswpod.com. Be good to yourself and others, because that still works.
Do you think the, what's the shoot, I had it written down, I don't remember now. You can cut this part out. What is it called? The blah, 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 the thing with the women talking to each other.
Bechdel test.
Thank you. George, can we explore a little bit that final clip you played?
Sure.
Yes. George, have you ever seen someone light their own farts, or have you lit your own farts?
What's your least favorite part about your job?
What is the weirdest thing that has ever happened to your nipples?
Do you often notice a difference between generic and name-brand foodstuffs?
What drug would you try if it was legal?